This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles, part of the CLNS Media Network, and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Let's start with Drake Maye, Greg. He spoke with the media just a little while ago on this Thursday, and he was asked about the new additions in free agency. He said, quote, "I'm pumped. A lot of new faces," unquote. Before I get to Maye's, it's all right. Before I get to Maye's part, how much better?
I was ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah, you right out of the chute on this Thursday. How you get some good sleep? So how much better is this offense on paper right now for you versus last May, Greg?
I mean, provided Will Campbell can play a adequate left tackle, I mean, I just think it's night and day compared to where they were, and hopefully we'll see how left guard shakes out. There's a bunch of different candidates. Could be anybody from Jared Wilson to Wes Schweitzer to Layden Robinson or Cole Strange, but obviously things need to shake out in terms of the wide receivers. Like, when is Kyle Williams going to get up to speed? Stephon Diggs, when's he going to be on the field? And, Mac Hollins, I know he's a fit for this offense and we'll know it. You have the tight ends back. You have, hopefully Ramondre Stevenson back on his game. You got Trayvon Henderson. I'll say this. My main takeaway from listening to Drake today was he's excited, about what's going on. And I think he also meant when he talked about the additions, I think he also meant on the defense because, they spent most of free agency on the defense. And I just thought he was excited overall that, whether it was Josh McDaniels or I thought and some of this is the young kid in him, but I thought the most excited that he was, that where he couldn't really contain himself, was being asked about Stephon Diggs. A lot of it was about he played with him in Madden, had him in fantasy and kind of like a little, fanboy type of thing.
Yeah.
But, he couldn't contain his excitement when he was asked about Stephon Diggs. And I think that goes for overall. I think it's the scheme. It's Josh McDaniels. It's their working relationship, what he's got around him. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, Nick, but, if I were in Drake Maye's shoes, after what I went through last year and everything that went on from, the players around him, he even talked about, Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. Again, he mentioned about how, now they need to know what's going on and where to line up, which is basically insinuating that they didn't know what they were doing last year. If I were in Drake Maye's shoes, I would feel like, not that I was released from prison or something like that, but I mean, it's got to be a 180 from where he finished the year and what went on and the losing and the coaching staff and the players around them to now, like a fresh start. And he talked about, Vrabel having to have your head on a swivel with him around. But, we also heard from, I think it was Christian Ellis later. I didn't hear him, but seeing some of the quotes that some of the reporters have put out there about, the new atmosphere and, basically loving coming to work. I mean, you could see why Drake Maye is a bit over the moon at this point.
You also have to figure that there's a good amount of pressure on Maye this year, right? I mean, you've got a lot of new faces. You've got a new scheme, new offensive coaching staff. How much pressure do you think is on this young man to get things right in year two?
Well, I do think there's a lot of pressure because it comes with the position. But I'll say this, Nick, from being around him the last year and, now seeing him today and sort of knowing, what's going on a little bit behind the scenes. And this is part of why I like Drake Maye a lot and his future potential is I don't think this kid feels pressure all that much. I think he's I think, he's a very bright guy, but I also think he he never gets in his own head. He just kind of, we saw the mistakes last year that he had, and he would come, right back and, sort of make amends. And so while there is obvious pressure, and there will be a lot of external pressure, especially if he and the offense and the team get off to a slow start next year, I think he's pretty oblivious to it. And to me, if I'm a Patriots fan, I'm excited about that.
That's why I thought all the talk when the Joe Milton trade happened, it's amazing that one tweet, which was what happened. Mike Reese tweeted when the Joe Milton trade happened, something along the lines of it cleared the runway for Drake Maye. It was one tweet. I haven't talked to Mike. I don't know if you've talked to Mike about the tweet. Mike probably regrets using the verbiage clear the runway, but a bunch of people took that one tweet in the clear the runway verbiage that Reese used, and all of a sudden we had 2 or 3 days of, can Drake Maye handle it? Drake Maye wanted Joe Milton out. It's like, can we cut the bullshit? Honestly, can we just cut the BS out? Because everything we've seen about Drake Maye, everything that's been said about him, the way he carries himself, the way he answers questions, the way he takes accountability, we can go on and on and on. There's absolutely not a single scintilla, not one iota of doubt that Drake Maye is ready to be the guy. And I don't think anybody that watches him or reads about him or knows about him would believe that he was shaken by Joe Milton. So that was one of the most ridiculous things that happened over the past couple of months was that Joe Milton narrative stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, of course, a lot of this has to do with, sports talk radio around here and how they, glob onto something. And like we all know, Mike Reese's reputation speaks for itself. And, Mike's somebody I go back to when we were young reporters in the AFC East. I was in Miami. He was up here at the, Middlesex Daily News. And along with, I go back a ways with, whether it's Curran and Breer, Karen, like all these guys, we go back to like my early days on the beat. But like, we know, like first, like, let's just point out, like me compared to Mike Reese in my reporting, as far as filtering, like I'm a humongous a-hole and Mike's really nice. and, not to speak for Mike, and I have not spoken to him about it, but the way that I read that was Mike was trying to nicely say what I've said on this podcast and I've written. Like Joe Milton was and this is like direct quotes from somebody in the organization, not a good dude and not conducive to a good quarterback room. I'm not saying I think they meant, they did say that, but I think they just meant in terms of, knowing your role, playing your role, being part of a harmonious quarterback room, that was going to be an issue. And it wasn't about Drake Maye. It was just about the room. And, I think that was Mike's way of nicely saying something like that.
Right.
And I'm sure Mike probably regrets it. We all do. I mean, how many times do I write, tweet, or say something that comes out wrong? And
all the time. The answer is all the time, Greg.
Yeah, the answer is all the time. And because unlike Mike Reese, I have no filter. And like I said, I'm an a-hole compared to like Mike Reese, and I fully admit that and embrace it. But I even heard some of course, I was listening to Beetle and Zoe in reaction to Drake Maye's press conference today, and he was asked about Joe Milton, and of course Beetle grabs on to his quotes about like, he's going to get a chance to be a backup and like all that stuff, and compare it to Brady and Garoppolo, and, the way Drew Bledsoe would talk about Tom or what. I mean, like, can we just give it a rest? I mean, Joe Milton's probably going to be a backup in this league at best. He's not going to play anytime soon. The Patriots didn't want to deal with that. We have obviously seen that they've put, football character and the team and all this stuff. Like these are the things that are, primary prerequisites for the job of the New England Patriots under Mike Vrabel. And like Joe Milton, for whatever reason, and I'm not here to blame him, Like if I was a 25-year-old quarterback too, and I had a 21-year-old guy in front of me who was drafted 3rd overall, it wouldn't be a great spot to be in. Like, I don't want to get a chance to start when I'm 30 years old. I want to start now. Like, I understand it, but it just didn't work for the Patriots. And that's all it was about. It didn't work for the Patriots. It had nothing to do with Drake Maye. And can we all just move on and just, go forward and see what this, whole new regime looks like?
In full transparency, I did not listen to Beadle and Zoe today, so I had no idea that Beadle did that after the press conference today. My comments were more about what happened, when the Milton trade happened. I just want to make sure that I clear that up because, aggregators and producers and things can happen. Right. Drake Maye also spoke about more responsibility, Greg, at the line of scrimmage, and he said, quote, in part, "It's great for me to hold the pin last," unquote. Yeah. What are the risks of too much too early here with Maye?
Well, first of all, I hope the grenade metaphor doesn't come to fruition because, we've talked about that before in the past with this Patriots offense at various points, like, Matt Patricia and then Alex Van Pelt, where we talked about it's a grenade offense because you're just waiting for 2 or 3 plays. The grenade's going to go off because somebody's going to F something up and it's going to be a disaster. Let's hope in short order we're past that. As far as the possible problems that could come from, giving Drake those keys, I really think they're minimal because I think one of Josh McDaniels' greatest strengths is not giving people, especially the quarterback. And you can go back to whether it was, Jimmy Garoppolo when he got a chance to start, Jacoby Brissett when he got a chance, Cam Newton when he came from the offenses that he ran and what he was asked to do, to Mac Jones as a rookie. Just going off Josh's track record, he is not going to give Drake too much that he can screw up. And Josh would be like, he would put that on him and be like, it's not Drake's fault. It's my fault for putting it on him. So, yeah, I mean, could there be some, landmines and potholes in the road to start? Yeah, but Josh is not going to put anything on Drake that he can't handle or at least learn from and apply those things going forward.
We know that Jacoby Brissett didn't do a ton in that game against Houston. I think it was a Thursday night, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
I remember watching that game at my bar down in Virginia Beach and saying, wow, like they came out and Brissett didn't look completely lost. And I think we tend to overlook some things. That's one of the most, I don't want to say amazing, that might be hyperbolic. That's one of the most significant things that McDaniels did in his time here in New England, because the backstory of that was like them finding out that Garoppolo wasn't going to play in like the 23rd hour and being able to just get not only, call the game for Brissett, and he had the run that everybody remembers in that game, use a little bit of his athleticism, but to get him mentally ready, and a lot of credit goes to Brissett as well. But, to get him ready for that game, given those circumstances, I think it says a lot about McDaniels understanding where his quarterback is mentally and how he can get his guys prepared in a lot of different ways. And I wonder for you, knowing what you know about Drake and talking to the people that you've talked to about Drake, how quickly do you think he'll pick up things and be able to control the line of scrimmage, Greg?
Really quickly. I mean, at least to this point, the Patriots have been very impressed with what Drake Maye is able to handle, how smart he is. And I think they're, borderline, giddy about it, but there is a process there and they'll go through the process and, there's certain check marks. And I think we even heard Josh McDaniels when he was off last year. And I think he was on Julian Edelman's podcast. And, he sort of explained how you bring along a young quarterback. And he talked about, it's cups and bowls, like every player, like, like what they're capable of. And like, it starts out as a cup. You hope that it gets to be a big bowl at some point in time. But, when they first start out, it's a cup and you fill it up and then you put a little bit over the top to see, as they go along. And that's something Josh really believes in. And I think they're very excited about where Drake Maye is at this point in time.
We've got more on Drake Maye and what he had to say at the podium today. But first, Greg will tell you all about our friends at Gametime.
The playoffs are here for basketball, hockey. You got baseball going on, even though the Red Sox blew a big one last night.
Oh, my God, that sucked. That game sucked.
Yeah, and that was one of the few games I've actually watched almost the whole game. Brutal.
Killer.
But as a real sports fan, to really take it all in and feel the atmosphere, you got to be there, and Gametime is the place to go. Gametime makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime makes it easy to take the guesswork out of buying playoff tickets. They have last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. They have everything. They have zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose the seats. They had a panoramic view, all that good stuff that I've told you about before. I was just looking. The Red Sox are going to be home this weekend against the Twins, and I just looked on Gametime. You can get infield load sheets. Really, third baseline, really good view, because I looked at the panoramic view. $59 each, all in. Four tickets. Just saw that. So if you want to get out, the weather's supposed to be a little bit dicey this weekend, but Friday's looking good if you want to get out there. So go check that out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What time is it? Gametime.
And for those listening, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show, a lot of other great Patriots content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. Let's get back to Drake Maye. Talking about the new coach, Greg, Mike Vrabel, talking about Mike Vrabel's program. You mentioned this a moment ago. He said, quote, have your head on a swivel and get to work, unquote. You touched this a little bit, but I want to dig in deeper here. What are you hearing about the differences in the building between last year and this year? Not just vibe, but kind of approach. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that has to do with it. I mean, we heard last year a lot of the off-season stuff we heard about was more about murals and music in the building and music at practice and all of that. And, the Patriots probably needed some of that to some extent, but, you can't fool the players. And, you better be on top of the X's and O's and what they're doing. And I think everybody involved just realizes, like, there's much more purpose in what they're doing, that, starting with Vrabel, that he knows exactly what he wants. He knows what kind of program he wants. He knows what kind of players he wants. And he has quickly implemented all of those things. And I think that, the players, especially the young players who didn't know any better, the Drake Mayes and, the Jalen Polks and, all the younger players who came in and really didn't know of the NFL. I think, they are now, their eyes have been opened to, oh, okay, so this makes a little bit more sense. This is what we're supposed to be doing. These guys know what they're doing, and I think they're deriving a lot of confidence from that.
Maye said that McDaniels has asked for his input with the install. What's the balance here? How much do you think McDaniels gives Maye ownership of what he wants to do, and how much do you think McDaniels says, no, this is what we've got to teach you to do?
I would say, like, early on, he would probably, I mean, it's definitely a mix. I wouldn't say it's quite 50-50. I would say it's more 60-40 to Drake's side. But, I could tell you that this is not unusual. I'm sure I've told the story, but, well, when I did that Houston Texans game plan story with Bill O'Brien and you're never going to get an inside look at the Patriots, how they do their offense. But I got one with Bill O'Brien, and George Godsey, who used to be with the Patriots, was the offensive coordinator at the time. And I could tell you, like, just in terms of game plan, so basically the way that it works is, on Monday, everybody's watching film. The players are at home or whatnot, or some of them are in the building. The coaches are all watching film. They're formulating the game plan. And I can tell you, like, Godsey and Brian Hoyer, who was the starter at the time, were texting nonstop about things that they wanted to do in that game plan. Do you like this? Do you not like that? There's like fire emojis and cash emojis, so there's going to be a lot of that stuff between Josh and Drake Maye. But I do think Josh has his system. Yes, he's adapted somewhat. And we heard that from Austin Hooper the other day saying, like, he's adapted to some things that Drake Maye does. I didn't think he was over the top about that, saying like it's going to be a huge departure. He did say like it's Josh's system. So the bones are going to be there, but at least in the early going, I think they're going to try to make him comfortable. But Josh certainly has a vision for where this offense is going. And the same offense that they're preparing for week 1 with a bunch of new guys is not going to be the one they're going to want to use against the Bills the second time they play them in December. And so Josh, with all his experience, has an eye on that, but you got to get there. And to get there, you got to get the quarterback on board and make him a little bit more comfortable. But Josh will definitely have his benchmarks for where he wants Drake Maye to get. And then really it's up to Drake Maye to get there or not.
All right, let's move on to some non-May stuff. Joe Cardona was released. The captain cleanse continues, Bedard.
Watch your back, Jabril Peppers.
Yeah, right.
I think he's the only one left as of the moment. Your new longest tenured Patriots are now Kyle Duggar, Anthony Jennings, and Mike Owenu from the 2020 draft. How things have changed. I mean, look, I think everybody saw this coming. You don't draft a long snapper or a kicker and say like, maybe they'll make the team. Obviously they targeted this guy. I did find what's interesting. I don't know if you saw this, Nick, but Patriots.com posted a photo gallery from behind the scenes of the draft. And a lot of it is like Mike Vrabel on the phone or Robert Kraft on the phone. I did find it interesting, and I haven't gone back and talked to people to see what the actual setup was, but when they showed, whether it was on TV or in these photos, like there's like no coaches in the draft room. Like it's this is going back to the way Bill did it a little bit, where the coaches would be in like a separate room or neighboring room or what have you. But I did find it interesting that there were 2 pictures of special teams coordinator Jeremy Springer in there, like fist bumping people. So obviously, I don't know whether it was the kicker pick or the long snapper pick, but obviously Jeremy Springer targeted those 2 positions for upgrade. We knew that kicker needed to. Long snapper was a sneaky one, like we said in the last sort of the draft review podcast. I thought Cardona was sort of on a downward trajectory in terms of the consistency of his snaps and the block kicks that have gone on around here. And I don't know. I just obviously Springer wanted an upgrade. They got him an upgrade, and we'll see where it goes from here.
I love Springer, man. I could see him like from the first time I saw him at that introductory press conference, hopped up on Mountain Dew. I could see him like with the rest of the coaches and coordinators, like down the hall, and they pick the long snapper, and he's like, yeah, and he's like run down the hallway. He whips the door open. He's like smacking people in the ass and giving high fives. Yeah, I got my guy. Like I could totally see Springer losing his mind. I love it. Cole Strange, his 5th-year option not picked up. No surprise.
Yeah, no surprise. I mean, you're not gonna. I don't know if you have the number for the 5th-year contracts for the offensive line. And remember, like they're all the same price along the offensive line, so there's no differentiation between tackle, which we know is the highest paid position, or center, or guard, which
I got that number for you. Let me jump in here. The 5th-year option would have cost the Patriots approximately $16.7 million.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a guy who we don't even know whether he's going to be on the team this year, and has not proven his worth. I'm not giving up on Cole Strange. He was coming back from injury. I still think there's a lot of talent there. I think he's going to be a player in this league. again, I don't think the Patriots, for these young offensive linemen the past few years, that this has been an environment conducive to them progressing and getting better. And, I'm hopeful that changes this year with these offensive line coaches, 3 of them that are experienced and have been through this before. But yeah, there's no way the Patriots are guaranteeing Cole Strange that he gets $16 million next year.
I should have put this question in after the Drake Maye stuff because it fits better, but it is what it is. Austin Hooper was speaking with the media, Greg, this week. He said a big reason why he returned was Drake Maye. Just your thoughts on the importance of that at that position, that guys say, yeah, I wanted to come back. And look, it could have been a number of different reasons as well why Hooper came back. But for him to kind of, point to Drake Maye at that position, how important is that to have that guy in the room, have that kind of gravitational pull?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's big. I mean, I don't want to, get hyperbolic about it, but it's important. I mean, I think the alternative is the Patriots, are like the Browns or like and that's where I think Austin Hooper came from, where you don't know what the future is. I mean, if you're a tight end or a receiver, knowing that your quarterback, who may be young and, made his fair share of mistakes as a rookie, but that you like playing with the dude and he throws a good ball and he shows a lot of potential for the future. I mean, that's not insignificant. And so, I think it's good to take the next step. I think we can all acknowledge that, if Drake Maye takes the next step and, is all of a sudden one of the better quarterbacks in the league and starts leading them to, double-digit wins, then, you're going to have a lot of people who are, going to be excited to be drafted by the Patriots, who are going to be excited to sign with the Patriots. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see. The team needs to have success, but I think Drake's personality and how he goes about his business, I think that's appealing to a lot of people, at least the ones that have played with him.
All right, one more thing we got to get to, and that's Bedard's annual redraft. And I read your column this morning, and let's start with pick 38, because pick 4 was Will Campbell, is what it is. Pick 38. What were you looking at, Greg, when you looked back at the decision-making by the Patriots last Friday night, and what was your decision at 38 once you kind of gathered all that intel and info?
Yeah, so I did want to mention, because I've heard some people, I've gotten, some blowback, but, as far as, 4 and 38, like I've heard from people who are like, they should have gone Ashton Genty and they should have gone Arante Ursary, who ended up being there at 38. And you remember in my mock draft, I went Will Campbell and Ursary, which they could have done. Again, the reason why I did not do that, and I can understand why people want to do that. I think to me, it's fantasy football. Like, I get it, but when I do this exercise, when I, do a mock draft for the Patriots, like I'm trying to put myself in Mike Vrabel and Elliott Wolf and Ryden Count in their shoes, which is, right, where the team is. Yeah, I can't screw this up. We have 10 wins over our last 41 games or whatever it is. Like, there's stuff on the line. It's not just, playing fantasy football and you drop a guy and you pick him up on waivers if it doesn't work out. Like, this is for real. And the reason why I did not entertain that, and I'm not changing my mind, and again, I don't go through this exercise just to be different. I'm trying to give you my opinion, my honest opinion on whether I would do something different or not. I wasn't doing Genty and then Ursary because as you go down the tackle list, Will Campbell and Membu and Kelvin Banks and Connerly and Justin Simmons and Ursary, these guys, as you go down the list, in my opinion, the chance of them starting at left tackle for you this year, where you have a gaping hole, it just goes dramatically down. And, I like Ursary. I would have taken a chance on him, especially as a, cover my ass just in case Campbell's not a tackle and Ursary does show that he can play left tackle. I do think that he's at least a right tackle in this league for a long time, but I would say my confidence in that is like 20%, maybe. Whereas Will Campbell, my level of confidence in him coming in year one and protecting Drake Maye adequately enough is probably about 85, 90%. And so where the Patriots were, I was not risking that. I wasn't. I can understand the sentiment, and we can all I was not risking that as Mike Vrabel, Ryan Cowden, Elliott Wolf, all these guys. So I just wanted to say that. So
yeah, and let me jump in for a second just to kind of underline what you're talking about here. Ursery went to Houston in the second round. It's so funny because Nick Caserio, I think, had the draft that, some Patriots fans at certain positions were like clamoring for, right? Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, Ariante Ursery. You can just literally go down the line of some of the favorites. But Ursery was drafted by Houston, and don't forget, Houston paid Cam Robinson. Now, it was a one-year deal, but they have Cam Robinson at left tackle right now. Ursery could end up supplanting Robinson during training camp or whatever, but I think the idea is we've got Cam Robinson at left tackle. Their right tackle is Blake Fisher, the guy from the University of Notre Dame. He was drafted last year, and he's going to play right tackle, so that's their right tackle of the future. I don't think a lot of people thought Ursery was going to be ready day one. And so when Houston takes him, but they already have Cam Robinson, the question for Patriots fans is, if you wanted Genty, fine, I get it. But if you wanted Ursery in round 2, if Ursery's not ready in 2025, are you cool with playing Vidarian Lowe? It was similar to me to all the talk about Armand Membu, and he's never played the left side. Like, I understand the thought process of elite athleticism, his size. He could move to left tackle, maybe, possibly. But what's the answer if he can't move to left tackle? What if he doesn't make that transition? You now have Lowe at left tackle for 2025, and what do you do with Membu? Or are you going to move Morgan Moses to replace Lowe on the left side? And does Moses want to do that? So, like you said, Greg, the fantasy football analogy, you can't just throw guys' names up on the board and just say, oh, they'll work out. You have to look at it and say, what if they don't work out? What if they're not ready to work out? What are we doing as a football team?
Yeah, exactly. So at 38 overall, players on the board, now that I do this exercise because now we know where people went and who was on the board and what did the NFL think about them? So you basically had Travion Henderson, Luther Burden, who was very popular topic, Mason Taylor, the tight end, defensive tackle TJ Sanders, Donovan Ezeraku from BC, and Arante Ursery. So, one of the things that I talked about when I broke this down was we know the Patriots had trade talks down to the final minute after the Dolphins jumped in front of the Patriots to draft Jonah Soyana. I had it. I got the pronunciation the other day. Soyana Naya. Okay. I think I got it right, sort of. In the
Soy Fiesta.
So we don't know what the offers were, but let's just say that it could have been Denver at 60 because we know Albert Breer has reported that Denver talked about taking Travion Henderson in the first round at like 20.
Yep.
We also know that Denver at 60 took RJ Harvey, the UCF running back, who was a favorite of mine. I had him below Travion Henderson. So let's just say it was the Broncos calling the Patriots for that pick. So the trade offer likely would have been Denver's pick at 60. So the Patriots would have gone from 38 to 60. That's 22 spots. It would have been 60 and 74. They would have picked up a high third round pick. That would have given, after the fourth overall picks at 60, the Patriots, if they did this trade, they would have 60, 69, 74, and 95. Let's see. So the Patriots wouldn't have picked from number 4 to 60 in this scenario. But just for fun, this is who they could have taken if they did do that. They could have, at 60, they could have taken RJ Harvey. At 69, they could have taken Kyle Williams. At 74, they could have doubled up at receiver and got a slot, Jalen Knoll. And then at 95, they could have taken Jared Wilson. I understand. Again, we don't know this was the trade offer. I'm guessing this was the trade offer. You basically are swapping Henderson for Harvey and adding Jalen Noel. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would have been signed up on this. Probably Phil Perry is one of the guys who would have signed up on it. He loves Jalen Noel. Remember, there's a little PTSD involved for Elliott Wolf because they did the same thing last year, bypassing Ladd McConkey in favor of trading down and getting a 2-for-1 in receivers and Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. This would have been the same thing with Kyle Williams and Jalen Noel, and that didn't work out too well. And so at the end of the day, I was okay with what they did, not taking the trade, sticking and picking Travion Henderson, because I just think that he is that good. He is that explosive and adds such a different element to this offense. Like, I wouldn't view, and Nick, I'm sure you feel similar because I've heard some of the complaints about, you took a running back in the second round. Don't view Travion Henderson and Kyle Williams as running back and receiver. View these guys in terms of adding speed and explosiveness to the offense in a variety of different ways, which the Patriots didn't have. So at the end of the day, at the end of this pick, I was okay with what they did taking Travion Henderson.
In your story, you're right. I want some juice out of this pick, and Henderson is the only clean. In parentheses, you put Burden is not. What have you heard about Burden?
Yeah, there's I'll tell you, this was straight from like Bob McGinn. There's a lot of stuff around him, including, I think this is the guy that his sister is his agent. His mom's heavily involved. Not a good practice player during the week, like all of that stuff, entitled, NIL, everybody kissing his ass at Missouri to keep him there, all that stuff. So that was all involved in Luther Burden. And to me, judging off what the Patriots have done this offseason and the people that they drafted, where Braden Swinson's the only sort of character that you could question a little bit due to butting heads with coaches, even though I think his football character in terms of, what he does in the building and on Saturdays for the most part is really good. I think given what the Patriots have done, I think you could say that Luther Burden was probably not on their draft board.
So this is from McGinn. Raised concerns about Burden's discipline, work ethic during practices. The scout who spoke to McGinn described Burden as, quote, one of the worst practice players you'll find, unquote. The report also mentioned off-field concerns, as Greg just mentioned, including the influence of Burden's mother and his girlfriend's role in his management. Bill Belichick joke. You can just put that right there. So that would be some of the reasons why. And there was also some, comportment on the field, sidelines, reaction to not getting the football at times. So there was some of that stuff out there. All right. Pick 69, Kyle Williams. What did it come down to for you when you were looking at the scenarios, Greg?
For me, Kyle Williams, defensive end Landon Jackson from Arkansas, who, if you might remember, I said that that matchup against Will Campbell gave me the most pause about Will Campbell, and now he is in the division with the Buffalo Bills. So that should be an interesting matchup, for years to come. And also Jalen Noel, who is there, who, is more of he's a slot guy. And a lot of people like him. Obviously, Nick Caserio likes him. I mean, I think a lot of Patriots fans would be excited with what the Texans did with who was the other? Jaden Higgins.
Yep.
And then Jalen Noel. You have the two Iowa State guys, outside and inside. It might work well for them. Remember, they subtracted Stephon Diggs from the equation. Jalen Noel is more of like a Stephon Diggs type of player. As the Patriots GM, I know I have Stephon Diggs. I know I have Demario Douglas. I also know that now that I picked Travion Henderson, that he could get involved in the pass game in a bunch of different places. Like, for example, I had somebody on Twitter ask me about, do you think they're more or less likely to incorporate Marcus Jones on offense now? And I was like, I think less, because I think those plays are going to go to Travion Henderson and, Pop Douglas. But I think everybody knows at this point how I feel about Kyle Williams. He's there at 69. I'm excited. As opposed to Noel, he has more outside. He's more of an outside receiver. He definitely has versatility, but he's more of an outside X, where Noel's more of a slot. I have enough there. I don't have enough on the outside. I certainly don't have enough explosiveness on the outside. So I am, for the third straight time, I am doing what the Patriots did in selecting Kyle Williams.
Your Marcus Jones point, I said this during one of the podcasts I host. I don't know if it was Locked On Patriots podcast or Everything Pats, but I did mention, I think it was Everything Pats because it was right after the pick, with Travion Henderson and the idea of just explosion. I brought up Marcus Jones, and just think about it from 30,000 feet. Like, that's how desperate the Patriots were to have guys on the offensive side of the football that brought that kind of dynamic to the field. The Marcus Jones conversations. That's how desperate they were. You should not be having those conversations of like, they got to get Marcus Jones on the field to help those conversations shouldn't be happening. So that just shows you the desperation for the past couple of years that they've had. As far as Jalen Noel, you also threw a little bit of the Bob McGinn stuff in your column about Noel and what McGinn had. And a lot of people say one of the hangups, one of the criticisms of Kyle Williams is the hands. Sometimes he has, concentration drops. He doesn't have big hands. A scout actually said to McGinn about Jalen Noel, my biggest hangup was his hands. He had some big drops, concentration drops, I guess. He's inconsistent. He's got 5 muffed punts over his career.
Oof.
So if we talk about Kyle Williams and question his hands, at least the scout who spoke to Bob McGinn also questions the hands of Jalen Noel. All right, let's wrap this up with the 2 trades down, which got the Patriots to the 95th pick. And, of course, that ended up being Jared Wilson. Greg, did they miss out on an opportunity?
In my opinion, no. I mean, I would have liked to have gotten a little bit more draft capital out of the Panthers. If you look at the trade chart, like if Carolina threw in, I think it was a 6th-round pick, it would have been a little bit more even. But at 70, so they were at 77. Jalen Noel was still on the board. You have Dylan Fairchild, the guard, Savion Williams, the wide receiver, Wyatt Milam, the tackle guard from West Virginia, who I really like, Emory Jones, who was Will Campbell's right tackle at LSU, probably more of a guard in the pros. Those guys were all there. Again, taking the pick and passing on Jalen Noel, they already took in Kyle Williams. If there's one mark against Kyle Williams or one sort of negative that people are looking for, he also does have some concentration drops. Now, I've heard Steve Smith on his podcast, and he knows Kyle Williams well. They're from the same area. He also said he reminds me a lot of me, which I tend to disagree with, but all respect to Steve Smith. But Steve Smith said when he had some of his drop problems there, he was going through some personal issues. So, Steve would know better than me. But again, I'm passing on Noel because I'm not adding 2 guys where concentration drops are sort of the biggest minuses for them on the field. So I am taking that trade down, and at 85, they were there again. Basically, you're looking at the same guys, plus safety Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, who we both really liked. This Williams kid, Savion Williams, is sort of like a Cordell Patterson type of guy, which, nice toy to have. Those guys, and if you look at Patterson's career, takes sort of a while to develop and really get it. I mean, Cordell Patterson really didn't become a player until he got to New England.
Yeah.
And that was a long time into his career. So again, I didn't like to do this. I didn't go into it saying that I was going to agree with them, but that's 3 picks in 2 trades where I actually would have done what the Patriots did. And I'm a little bit scared about that. It's a little weird to feel that way, but I got to give it to them. I mean, I really don't, for the first 2 days of the draft, I really don't have any second guesses for what they did. And I don't know, I haven't done day 3 yet, and I will in the next coming days. But, on first blush, I don't know how much different I'm going to do again. So, again, I got to give the Patriots credit for the way they executed in this draft. And Nick, let me also say this. And it's not just me, and it's not just Homer Media, and it's not just Homer National Media. Texting around with 5, 6, I don't know how many NFL executives. They all universally said the Patriots crushed the draft. And NFC GM, who I greatly respect, texted literally, they crushed the draft. So these guys know a hell of a lot more about the draft and these players than I do. And so I defer to them. And so far, through the first 2 days of the draft, I thought the Patriots did a great job.
I'm working at 98.5 on Saturday afternoon. So if you could get a story out with some of the quotes that you have from the people you spoke with, that'd be great, Greg, before 2:00 on Saturday. I'd appreciate it. Well,
I probably not, because I have a feeling Giardi. I have a feeling Giardi is probably doing his this weekend. I haven't gotten his weekend notes, but he usually does. He's usually working on that now. So you might get some stuff from that. And I'm giving it a little bit more time, probably sometime next week, where I sort of go through the draft picks and also generally what people think about the draft.
All right. Well, that's fine. I need podcast content, so I'll take that. You can check them out. BSJ, $50 for the year. Bedard and Giardi tag teaming on the Patriots, of course. John Corrales, locked on Paisano, with me there. He's, of course, writing about the Celtics, who have advanced to the second round, waiting for the Knicks-Pistons winner. So John's got a great coverage over there, and Haggerty on the Bruins disaster. So enjoy all of that, and we'll talk to you soon. Be well. Have a great weekend.